Doesn't look like Fat Joe supports the Black Brown Coalition. Just saying. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Better get the cold slow, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Hispanic rapper Fat Joe decided to openly disrespect foundational black Americans by calling us radical racists. Now, on a Hoffa's My Expert Opinion podcast, Fat Joe, in a part of the conversation, discussed what he called foundational black American groups, calling them radical racists, and said that foundational black Americans are descendants of enslaved black people who built the U.S. from scratch and are looking to exclude black people across the diaspora, including Caribbeans and Afro-Latinos. And according to him, he says, it's these group of guys who don't want to hear Jamaican, don't want to hear Guyanese, don't want to hear a black guy not down with them. And so it's their job to criticize anybody who doesn't like them, who ain't black American, and says the FBA, whoever these broke N-words are, keeping it a buck, and their mission is to attack everyone on Twitter. Well, as a foundational black American man, I can listen to Fat Joe's rant, and it's clear to me he doesn't understand anything regarding foundational black Americans and our positions as related to our arguments. Now, when it comes to foundational black Americans are not racist. No, most foundational black Americans who are the descendants of enslaved black people, what we are looking to do is just lay a foundation as related to our position economically and politically in this country. And as we look to lay our foundation as related to that economic and political agenda, what it does is upset a lot of those non-blacks and those foreign-born blacks who basically have tethered themselves to black people ever since the days of the Civil Rights Movement. Now, during the days of the Civil Rights Movement, the people who were a part of the Civil Rights Movement, such as the silent generation and the baby boomers, they basically allowed a lot of individuals who were foreign-born blacks to become a part of the movement and allowed them to become a part of the movement because all of us were being oppressed by the system of white supremacy. However, after the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were enacted, many of these individuals who tethered themselves to the black community, who were foreign-born blacks and other minorities such as Hispanics, they began to separate themselves from foundational black Americans. And as they separated themselves from foundational black Americans, they were able to go out here and get tangibles in the form of payments from the government and also be able to go out here and build businesses and achieve the American dream, or at the expense of many of the foundational black Americans who went out here and fought and sacrificed to get the civil rights acts passed that allowed them to enjoy all of the freedoms and benefits of this country. And that's what Fat Joe doesn't understand, with himself being a tether himself. No, this tether doesn't really understand that most of the things that he basically got as related to his career in hip-hop were due to foundational black Americans going out here and laying the ground for rap music in the late 1970s in the Bronx. If it wasn't for foundational black Americans going out here and creating rap music, Fat Joe wouldn't have a career right now. to be able to go out here and speak bad about foundational black Americans. And I have to say, he's just completely full of it when he sits there and wants to talk about how foundational black Americans are radical racists. No, we are not radical racists. No, most of us foundational black Americans are out here fighting against anti-black racism. And what we're doing as we fight against anti-black racism is coming together as a collective to go out here and shore up our base, going out here looking to shore up our base, and shoring up our base is basically showing us who's truly on our side. And when you look at Fat Joe ain't on the side of foundational black Americans because he knows that once black people close ranks, he won't be able to go out here and tether himself to our community, and he won't be able to go out here and tether himself to our community and indirectly go out here and receive benefits from our community by saying that, oh, I'm one of these guys who's a part of the Black and Brown Coalition, a Black and Brown coalition he never really was a part of because, like many Hispanics in the Bronx during the 1980s, who basically came up at the expense of foundational black Americans to the point where they basically took over all of the political base here in the Bronx, Fat Joe basically is out here looking to go out here and call us radical racists. Meanwhile, many of those Hispanics who gained political power here in the Bronx never looked back at the black people who went out here and voted for Hispanic candidates like Fernando Ferrer, who became the Bronx Borough president, and many other Hispanics who became city council people. They never looked back at many of the foundational black Americans as they went out here and got their political power and were able to get tangibles from those black votes, but never gave them back to foundational black Americans. And now what Fat Joe wants to do is go out here and look to go out here and call foundational black Americans radical racists when there's nothing radical about what black people are doing. No, the only reason why it's radical in Fat Joe's eyes is because he doesn't want to see black people going out here and getting political power. And he doesn't want to see black people getting political power because he knows that a lot of Hispanics will reap what they sow, later than what they sow, greater than what they sow, if foundational black Americans go out here and close ranks. If foundational black Americans go out here and close ranks, what's going to happen is, with more black people focused on black empowerment, that means that a lot of that money that guys like Fat Joe used to make at the Hispanic-owned bodegas and many of the Dominican barbershops and many of the businesses that basically wound up replacing many of the black-owned businesses, what's going to happen is he's going to go out here and wind up losing all of that $3.3 trillion in spending power. And that's what's got Fat Joe all heated. That's the thing that's got him all heated to call foundational black Americans a bunch of broke N-words, showing us all who the real racist is. I mean, he's going to go out here and use a racial slur towards people like me when it's people like me that basically were the ones who were spending money at many of the Latino-owned businesses here in the Bronx. It was many black people like myself that enabled many people who owned Hispanic-owned businesses like bodegas, like hair salons, like barbershops, labeled a lot of those people to go out here and live a middle-class lifestyle with our $3.3 trillion in spending power that foundational black Americans have. And it looks like to me that Fat Joe has a big fat case of envy of foundational black Americans, and a big case of envy rooted in fear of foundational black Americans and the influence of foundational black Americans on the black community, which looks like after the 2024 election is starting to wake up. And with foundational black Americans starting to wake up, what you have guys like Fat Joe looking to do is go out here and look to go out here and get upset because foundational black Americans again are cutting ourselves off from the tethers who basically again want to leech off black culture and leech off the black economy, cut off the bootlicks who are out here looking to go out here and gain and use us as a stepping stone to get favor with white supremacy, and cut off those who basically see black people as a way to go out here and make a fast dollar. That's what's got Fat Joe basically terrified and basically got this guy quaking in his boots because he knows that his fat ass won't be able to go out here and get money off of black people. And he wants to say that their mission is to attack everyone on Twitter. No, when it comes to FBA, like myself, foundational black American men like myself, I don't even spend much time on Twitter, or X as it's called these days, outside of looking to promote my books and continue to try to build my SJS Direct imprint, where I create positive stories about the black experience. That's all I do on platforms like Twitter, and I don't spend much time looking to attack anyone at all. No, I spend time looking to promote my business and also go out here, and when I'm making videos like the one this viewer requested, I'm sitting here talking about the history of rap music. And again, when it comes to the history of rap music, the guys like Fat Joe want to go out here and push anti-black narratives where they go out here and say things like hip-hop was basically made by Puerto Ricans, which is not true at all. No, there were Puerto Ricans in rap music, like the real Roxanne and the guy Marky D from the Fat Boys. Yes, there were Puerto Ricans in rap music. There was people in hip-hop who were Hispanic, but the whole thing is the foundation of that music was made by foundational black Americans in the late 1970s. The whole concept was basically based on the whole concept of phonics, and it was rhythm and poetry, and it was designed to empower black people. The whole foundation of rap was about empowering black people and showing how black people, even though we were in poverty, could create empowering and uplifting messages regarding ourselves and present an image of self that showed how we were all about empowering ourselves. And that's how foundational black American, the narrative, flows into hip-hop, because rap music again was about empowering black people before it got co-opted and hijacked in the late 80s on the West Coast by the people who produced the NWA. When those people came in, they hijacked rap music and made it into the gangster rap, and also allowed others to come in to basically dilute the original narratives, which were about black empowerment. And now we've got Fat Joe looking to go out here and disrespect most of the foundational black Americans who made him into a star, because if it wasn't for foundational black Americans, Fat Joe wouldn't even be relevant to most people, because as somebody who lived in the South Bronx around Puerto Ricans, around Dominicans, around Cubans, around Ecuadorians, and around lots of people from Latin America, I can tell you from living in places like Grant Avenue on the South Bronx and walking down the Grand Concourse, they wasn't playing no rap music. No, most of the Hispanics I knew, basically when they were driving their Cutlasses in the late 80s and early 90s and their Regals or their SUVs, they were playing Spanish music, and they were playing things like Tuya or Es Muerte or whatever Latin music they were playing. They were not playing no rap music at all, and most of the Hispanics basically saw Fat Joe as a fat sellout even then. So Fat Joe want to go out here and talk smack about foundational black Americans when Hispanics basically were not really feeling him at all. No, many of the Puerto Ricans, many of the Dominicans, many of the Ecuadorians, many of the Mexicans, many of the El Salvadorans wasn't feeling no Fat Joe. No, when it comes down to it, they were basically listening to real rappers, and they didn't really see him as much of anything relevant at all. No, when it comes to Fat Joe, they basically saw him the same way I see him, as basically a bootlick and a guy trying to pass for white, and basically looking to go out here and talk smack about foundational black Americans, because he basically wants to go out here and assimilate into white society by going out here and bringing up a white supremacist talking point, talking about how black people are radical racists. No, black people can't be racist because we don't control any of the economics in the communities like the South Bronx. We don't control any of the politics. No, many of the areas like the South Bronx basically have their economics and politics basically transferred from white hands to Hispanic hands. Saw that go on in the 1980s and 1990s. And again, those same Hispanics participated in the same white supremacy. So he's sitting there saying, oh, FBA is radical racist. No, we don't have any economic or political power, but we are looking to get economic and political power. And that is the thing that scares Fat Joe, because he needs to tether himself to black people in order to keep getting that 3.3 trillion that he basically continues to get from the black dollars that made him into a star. And if FBA start to close ranks the way Hispanics do as related to things like the job market, where they openly discriminate against foundational black American men like myself and keep us from being able to get work, then it means that, again, I'll repeat it once more, all the money that basically made the South Bronx a place where Hispanics became a part of a middle class would go into poverty. And that's the thing that's got Fat Joe scared about of these broke people, as he calls them. Again, those same broke people, again, were the ones who allowed many bodega owners to send their kids to private schools. Many of those broke black people were the reason why many businesses in the South Bronx were able to expand. So when I listen to Fat Joe sit here and go into this racist rant, I know how full of it he is, because most of the South Bronx that I lived in growing up over the 51 years of living in Morrisania, I can tell you it was black dollars that basically allowed a lot of Hispanics to go out here and become a part of the middle class. They wouldn't have become a part of the middle class if it wasn't for the black dollar, and if it wasn't for black people going out here and buying Fat Joe's record. Fat Joe would basically be broke Joe, and he knows he would be broke Joe, and he would be the one who would be the broke dude at the end of the day. The broke dude basically out here trying to talk a lot of crap, but we know how full of crap he actually is. I mean, he's full of crap talking about black people being broke. Again, foundational black Americans were the ones who made this guy a star. And again, the way we deal with this dude is to not only call him out, but to also go out here and keep our dollars in our pocket and see how far Fat Joe gets with the Latino community, see how far he actually gets, because again, as someone who was there as this guy was out, I can tell you this guy was not no big star. I mean, he wasn't anybody big at all. No, he's sitting up here talking about, oh, you're looking to cut your... No, we're not looking to do anything but close ranks, again, to create a platform for our economic and political agenda, to get tangibles from the government that we pay taxes to and we vote for. This is what foundational black Americans are doing, no different than what Hispanics did in the 1980s here in the Bronx, because in the 1980s, as Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Mexicans, Ecuadorians, El Salvadorans, they all came together and started electing people like Fernando Ferrer to become the first Hispanic borough president of the Bronx. and further continue to go out here and hire people for prominent jobs here in the Bronx. And they use that to again control the politics and the economy. And that's what foundational black Americans would have been doing had we not gotten sidetracked by integration. Had foundational black Americans not gotten sidetracked by integration, you would have seen black people taking that type of economic and political power. Had we not gotten sidetracked by integration, having a divide and conquer with the feminist movement, you would have seen black people out here fighting like this. But the whole thing is, this guy wants to do is say, oh, you're wrong for looking to close ranks when Hispanics have been closing ranks for over 40 years. And I've seen, again, Hispanics close ranks not only in the Bronx, but also in places like Washington Heights and parts of Harlem. So I know how full of it this guy is. And again, when it comes to foundational black Americans, this is not a movement that's just done on social media, as we can see by the impact of the 2024 presidential election. No, in the 2024 presidential election, foundational black Americans stayed home, and when foundational black Americans stayed home, Kamala Harris lost the election, and lost the election because she alienated the black vote. And once she alienated the black vote, basically, that was a wrap for Kamala Harris, the same way it was in 2016 after Barack Obama alienated the black vote. And again, the black vote is an extremely powerful one. And what guys like Fat Joe don't want you to see is black people taking power and gaining strength and momentum as related to the economic and political power that many are realizing that we have, that the late David Carroll told us that we had, as related to our $3.3 trillion in spending power in cash and credit, and our power as a voting bloc being the base of the blue party that we basically see with the loss of Kamala Harris. This is what's got Fat Joe basically got his skid mark jockey draws in a bit of a bind. This is what's got him upset, that foundational black Americans are starting to realize our economic and political power. And basically, as we start to realize our economic and political power, he's realizing that as one of these tethers, he's basically going to get cut off, and again, going to get cut off because we know all about all the racist things that Fat Joe has said, and with Fat Joe looking to again call us N-words and act just like a racist, this is where black people need to exercise our economic and political power, and let Fat Joe know that if he wants to go again and disrespect FBA, we keep our money in our pocket. We keep our money in our pocket. We don't support racists. And let this guy, Fat Joe, who wants to get everybody asleep, find out what it means when you go out here and disrespect foundational black Americans. When you disrespect us, we take our respect by taking our black dollars away from you, and we also take our presence away from you and make you as irrelevant as you would be from the people in your own community who basically don't listen to your music, because again, Fat Joe wouldn't be a rap star in the Hispanic community. No, he's only a rap star because black people were the ones who bought his albums and made him a star. But we can also take away that star, and again, take away that star by keeping our money in our pocket, and keep our money in our pocket because it's not for us to support a racist like Fat Joe. Again, this racist wants to show his true colors, and if he wants to show his true colors and doesn't want to go out here and respect us as people, then we take our respect by taking ourselves away from this guy who wants to again call black people racist. Again, we don't. If we're a bunch of racists, then you don't need our money. You don't need our money, Fat Joe. No, you can take your fat ass on and go get your dollars from all those other people who you think are going to go out here and keep a buck with you. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation to the PayPal or the Cash App for a minimum of $15, and if I can make that video for you, I'll try to make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction and support a black-owned business and help this black business grow and get some literature that will inspire and uplift your children, you can pick up many of the books in the SJS Direct imprint, such as those in the ISIS series, those in the Steam series, those in the John Haynes series, those in the Spinsterella trilogy, or my vampire novel Eternal Night, or my other novels like The Thetas and A Recipe for Success, or my men's issues books. You can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And that's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose. The man who rules the world runs into the irresistible force of a man with nothing to lose in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get the regular and variant editions of John Haynes, The Man with Nothing to Lose on Amazon.com today. Support black-owned and black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.